I had a chip on my shoulder that I felt like, okay, I could do this. Once I get this opportunity, I'm going to see it, and I'm going to kill it. I'm Jeff St.Arromand with Serhant. We're not just realtors or brokers or whatever we are. We are a brand. And part of my brand is the look. And plus, I enjoy looking good. You look good, feel good, smell good, sell good. And that's the Deion Sanders line. You know that? So I worked in television production for a little over a decade, Emmy Award-winning producer. But then I wanted to pivot into real estate.
What makes you think I'm gonna leave what I have here and I'm gonna go down to the bottom in this new field?
It's two things: faith and confidence. So many people, especially when you feel like you've reached whatever this level is in one field, they're afraid to make that pivot. They're afraid to start over. Fear can just keep you in a space and in a box, and for there to be growth, you have to be uncomfortable. You have to have that humility to say, okay, I'm gonna start over.
Is there like a dark moment? Feeling underestimated, feeling slighted?
I think, first of all, yeah, it's a hell of a questions, man. I may have to go see a therapist after this.
No, we just do it all here. The therapy is included.
Exactly, the therapy session here.
I'll just bill you after this.
Yeah. No, I think for me, that started,
If we look at your career, it takes confidence to be working with Kanye West and Common. It takes confidence to win Emmys. It takes confidence to make the pivot from sports production to real estate. Where does your confidence come from?
I would tell you, my confidence comes from... That's a cliffhanger.
Okay, nice.
Stand by.
Callum Johnson Show. Jeffrey St.Arromand on the pod. Jeffrey, welcome to the show.
Callum, thank you so much for having me. This is one of the first times I'm actually in person, so I'm ready for some good energy and good conversation.
I know, we're pleased to have you. And I, even when you walked in, I was like, this is the sharpest dressed guest that we've had so far. Like, you took the number one spot.
I appreciate that. But, we're big on brand. Branding is important. We're not just realtors or brokers or whatever we are. We are a brand. And part of my brand is the look. Plus, I enjoy looking good. You look good, feel good, smell good, sell good. And that's the Deion Sanders line.
Nice. Okay, so here's where I want to begin. So you're a 3-time Emmy Award-winning as a sports producer.
Yep.
Worked on some of the biggest events, right? Together with your team, you've sold over $300 million in real estate. Yep. I've listed off a couple of accomplishments.
Okay, yeah.
I'm sure there's many more. If you were going to look back on your career and think back, which is the proudest one? Which is the one that you think of and you're like, that was really like a turning point. That was a meaningful accomplishment for me. What comes to mind? This episode is brought to you by Free Agency. If you want to take your career to the next level, Free Agency is a company that you should check out. They manage and represent talent in the tech industry, and they provide you with a dedicated talent agent to help you find, engage, and win top of market roles that will maximize your earning potential. No more leaving money on the table. Stop job searching alone and start building your dream career today with Free Agency. Anyway, back to the show.
You're starting off with the loaded questions already, huh? Okay. I'd have to really give that some thought. I mean, one as you were saying that, one thing I would think of, it may be odd to say this, but just I would parse it off into television versus real estate, and give you two answers there. But as it pertains to television, I would say one of the things that I'm most proud of, because at this time in television, there really wasn't a lot of influence of the culture into television production. So I want to say I was one of the first to really push that envelope. And now you see a lot of, whether it be rappers or whomever else, doing branding deals with networks for Final Fours, NBA championship. I think most recently Khaled did it or something. But not to date myself, I did a video with for the Super Bowl with Kanye West and Common. And it was, and this was all, I didn't have anyone else like assisting me to get these guys to be a part of it. It was when Chicago was in the Super Bowl. And so I told them it would harken back to like the Super Bowl shuffle and something like that. And ironically, I have a connection with Common because I went to, I graduated from Florida A&M University, and Common was there for a couple of years until he embarked on his great career. Yeah. So I leaned on that, and that video in the Super Bowl was probably something I'm most proud of because it was just me. I had a great editor that I worked with, a great DP that I worked with, that really got great shots, and the entire production team that was involved with getting us time in the studio in LA, and then determining which song we're going to use, and then change the lyrics to make it football relevant. I thought that was really groundbreaking. And then after that, then 50 Cent did something with Monday Night Football, and then other athletes and rappers started doing those type of brand deals. So that I thought was really trailblazing in doing that. And I remember the entire Super Bowl compound was like, "What is going on?" Kanye West and Common coming into the edit room to go see the video, and so it was I think that was a really poignant moment that I remember. So that's that. In real estate, I would say just understanding the importance of working with a lot of other people. Most recently, I'll say two things. One was bringing the skill set from television into real estate, and then really seeing how well that was embraced, especially most recently as I started to work at Serhant with Ryan Serhant. In that brokerage, we have an in-house studio team, about 25 production people in the studio team, and we did a video that was so well received. Both I did one and my fiance did one, and we did one together that really changed, made an impact at the firm, because that was our first year there, and they were like, "Oh, out of the blue, these guys are doing these great videos." And also, I think that contributed to us selling a property. It contributed to us selling a property for $500,000 over ask.
Wow.
So those two things were I think were pretty big accomplishments. Thinking right now, since you just asked me the question, but yeah, I think those two things were really big moments in my career.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because the reason, and you can actually tell me if this is correct, but just listening to you, the sense I got is the pride in the accomplishment, and the reason those two stood out in particular is because it was like it was trailblazing.
Yeah.
It was first of its kind. It was leading the way. Is that the reason that you would say that like those ones were meaningful? Because you were the first doing it. You were the first through the door.
Yeah, and I don't know if I was necessarily, well, definitely for the NFL, when I was probably the first through the door, one of the first doing that. And as it pertains to television, to real estate, I definitely wasn't the first, but I think I was the first one to really put a different spin to it. To be quite honest, there's no one that's really the first at anything. We're really just reinventing things that happened previously and just putting your own spin on it and making it unique. And that's what I'm really most proud of, is that I can find something that has been done before and find a way to make it my own, and really brand it with the JSA, as because I'm JSA Sells NYC on IG. Shameless plug there. But as I just brand it JSA, like, as my thing. So when people see videos, certain content that I put out, they know that this is something that is unique to me. And I think that's what's really important, because especially in this landscape, as we speak specifically to real estate, there are so many realtors. So how do you separate yourself from the fray of everyone else? And I think that's one of the things that I really have a lot of pride in, is the way I market and the level of creativity, because ultimately everything is a story. Your storytelling, whether it be in television production or a home, there's always a story that you're telling, and you want that, specifically as it pertains to real estate, you want that buyer and or seller to really feel engaged by the home, and not just the home, but also the community. So that type of storytelling, I think, is really important to give some type of energy, so they know, oh, this is what it would be like if I'm here with my family, or if I choose to purchase this property. This is the feel and the energy that it is. And so you convey that story to them. So that's what I really think is important, that I put my stamp on it, and then they know, oh, I know who did this.
Yeah. No, that's great. And I love what you said at the end of like putting your stamp on things. Because that's really when you create a magic, right?
Absolutely.
It's when you take something that's good, but then you mix it with your own storytelling ability, your own branding, your own personality, charisma, character. And that feeds into what brand is, right? It's putting your stamp on something. I want to go back to your television days,
okay,
as you call it. And let's even talk about the Common and the Kanye West moment. How does something like that come together? First of all, and then second of all, when you're working with talent like Common and Kanye West, especially Kanye, we know like he has like a vision, right, for everything. He has his own stamp that he wants to put on anything that he's involved with. From the production side of things, from being a producer, working with talent like that, the Super Bowl, how do you even put your stamp on something like that?
Well, I think a lot of that has to deal with the level of confidence that I have. You have to be confident in what it is that you're going to do and be able to convey that to the talent, so they can see your vision. Again, the storytelling, that's the inception of the storytelling. You determine what the story is for yourself as you lay out the production of what you're going to do. And then you have to be so confident in the vision that they see your vision as well. So when I talk to Common, I'm like, oh, this is what we're going to do. We're going to shoot it in the studio, really have it an organic feel, as if you guys are just laying down the track in the studio, and we're going to intercut, great images of the football game and do some great graphics behind you. And we really need you to bring the energy. So and I never forget this, as they're doing their rhyme and doing their verses, I'm directly behind the camera, like just doing all this, like as if I'm listening to it there to get their energy up, to keep them engaged, because it's just me, them, and maybe a couple of production people. So now I just get right into it. So it's really a matter of having that right energy, and they know that, okay, I can trust this guy. I can trust him implicitly on what he's going to do, and he's going to take care of me. And then obviously they come to the edit to make sure it's what I initially told him, and it was. But that's really the way it is, and also being flexible, because to your point, someone like Kanye, I think he was just, I remember now. I'm really harkening back to it. He was he didn't have any rhymes written, so he was just mumbling it was interesting to see his creative process. So he was just mumbling lines and figuring it out, and then he was like, okay, let's go. So it's like giving the latitude to let them for me to understand that they're just as creative as I am, and giving them that latitude, but just making sure that it stays within the overall structure of what I want to do. And then again, I always like to draw parallels. That's the same thing with real estate, because whether it be a seller that you're working for, ultimately, you have a vision, and they may not want to do something that you want to do. So how then do you edit? How do you pivot? I always coin this phrase, the power pivot, from one career to the next, but it's also the power pivot with understanding that you work for them and they may not want to do this. So how do you find that comfortable medium? So it's just keeping that in mind, especially when it comes to like trying to get price reductions. If it's something is priced too high, you want to price it at this level, but they want to be up here. So how do you find that common ground? So that's part of the thing, that you understand that, it's a collaborative effort. But you come with a plan to begin with. Yeah.
It's interesting. I love hearing about people's like creative process. And then I also love the dynamic between like confidence and there's a certain level of like, we even spoke a few weeks ago with a music producer.
Okay.
And he's worked with like some prominent artists. And he was talking about how like a lot of the times, right until the end, you don't really see the final song that you're like, oh, this is the hit. This, like, we got it here.
Right.
90% of the time, you're like, what are they doing? Or like maybe they're, I was telling a story a few episodes ago about Jay-Z's creative process.
Okay.
And how he kind of will just be like mumbling the words to songs. And a lot of people be looking at him like, what is going on? But then when he gets in the studio, it's like done, it's perfect.
Yeah.
And what you realize is there's commonalities between people's process, and there's actually a lot of uncertainty up until the moment that you come to that final product. And it takes a lot of, there's a certain level of faith, right? That you're going to get there, that in the end, through this process, you're going to get to the final, product. I'm curious, like, when I looked at your career path, it's unique. Like, it's very unique. even if you just said to someone like sports producer goes to real estate, then crushing it in real estate, it feels like you would have needed a lot of faith as you were going through the steps.
I laugh because that's a hell of an understatement.
Yeah.
Complete level of faith.
Yeah.
Spiritual faith, number one, and faith in the direction that you're going. And understanding that it's not an instant gratification. I mean, in both fields, because I started entry level as a researcher, and then I ended up becoming a broadcast associate director, feature producer, and then so that was a path. And it's the same thing in real estate. I just knew that I wanted to. I knew I needed coaching to expedite that learning curve, so I did that. But I knew ultimately that the skill set that I had can really make an impact in the industry. And I felt the same way in television also, because prior to becoming a feature producer, there were other feature producers that were doing things, and I would watch everything that they do, sit in edit rooms, get a sense of what they're doing, and then and now in retrospect, I think about it, I was putting my stamp on that, so I knew, okay, once I get that opportunity, here's what I'm going to do different. And learn from those people that were more seasoned than I was until I got that opportunity, and then I was able to run with it. And again, I think the same thing holds true in real estate. Once I had the coaching to get the bare basics down initially, I spent a lot of time in the office, and I would gravitate to the top salespeople in the office and see what are they doing. What can I absorb from them? And I think I always tell people this: the 10,000 hours?
Yeah.
Who is that? The author there?
I think it was Malcolm.
Yeah,
Gladwell?
Malcolm Gladwell.
Yeah.
With 10,000 hours, I think that's so true, because I was doing that prior to that book even coming out, and then I realized, oh wow, I spent more than 10,000 hours in television, and I spent more than 10,000 hours in real estate, and there's the one caveat to that, I would say 10,000 hours making sure you're surrounded by people who are really the best at what they do, and with that, the success will come. But I never wavered, but I just knew that there were definitely ebbs and flows, especially in real estate. And that's one thing where that faith was important to push through those hard times. But and I tell people that all the time. I never sugarcoat it. It's not an easy industry to break into. But if you're able to stick through it, and you're getting the systems in place, you're getting the education you need, the mentoring you need, the results are going to come. But it's a journey. It's a journey, and I'm still on the journey now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what? There's a path, right? And it's exactly what you outlined. It's like the preparation, and there's a ton of preparation that's goes into achieving anything. And you're preparing, and you're not even seeing the results, right, in that time.
Yeah.
And that's when the faith is keeping you going. And then within those hours of preparation, those 10,000 hours of preparation, there's going to be opportunities where now it's your moment. Like the spotlight is almost on you, and now it's your time to like show what you've got.
Absolutely.
When I say that, are there moments in your career in television that come to mind where you'd been preparing and then you got your shot, and I don't know, just break down like a story for us, like of like this is the time, and then like also like why you felt prepared, because the one thing I always say, there's no better feeling than your moment coming and you have like supreme confidence because you're like, I was built for this moment,
Yeah. I mean, now you're really making me jog back, but I could think of one. It's a pretty, and it's actually apropos now as we enter into March Madness.
Yeah.
I produced One Shining Moment, which is the highlight reel essentially of the entire tournament. So after the championship team is crowned, then we have this one shining moment with all the great moments of the NCAA tournament, and it was like an iconic piece of for the network at that point, and it was my opportunity. And I still think I'm the only African American to have ever produced that.
Wow.
And we had a big spread on some big press. I want to say USA Today did a piece on me prepping for that, which was completely something I was shocked by. But I had worked with so many other producers doing that particular event. I'd worked on so many, as an associate producer at that point, so many other producers, and that was that moment. That was my one shining moment, as it were. I knew that was the opportunity. That now this is what you worked for, and here it is, and you're on that stage. You're on that grand stage, and it was a great. I think somewhat biased. I think it was one of the better one shining moments that have been produced. But it was that was it. That was that moment. And it was, and when you're in that time, you don't really think about the trailblazing that you're doing for other people who are look similar to me, who want that type of opportunity. But I think I definitely I did a great job with it, and that was that moment. That was that moment. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's special. That's special. I think everything that you're saying, it takes like I think about even what you're saying about being the first or the only like black producer to even work on Shining Light.
One shining
moment.
Mm-hmm. Clearly you're not a big sports fan.
I am, but I'm not really on the American.
Oh, okay.
Side.
Yeah, see, this is my American bias. I say sports, I think of like American sports.
Yeah.
You're probably a big football fan.
Yeah, I love football.
Yeah. And not the NFL, mind you.
Yeah. To be honest, I'm actually getting more into the NFL.
Are you? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm getting like assimilating to the American culture. But like even to be the first one, and I've definitely felt this in my career, a lot of the times you're and I think a lot of minorities would feel this. I definitely feel it as like a black man. You're stepping into rooms and like a lot of the times you're the only one, or you're like one of a few.
Right.
And so if we look at your career, it takes confidence to be working with Kanye West and Common. Mm-hmm. It takes confidence to win Emmys. It takes confidence to make the pivot from sports production to real estate. It takes confidence to even just do sales.
Right.
It takes confidence to be in rooms where you're like, you stand out basically in most rooms that you come in straight off the bat without saying anything.
Much less being dressed this way, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you really stand out. Where does your confidence come from?
I would tell you, my confidence comes from, my family. Mm-hmm. I have, and people have heard this story before. I have two sisters that are brilliant. They're about, 6-7 years older than me, but that's where the confidence comes from. I have one that's the head of orthopedic surgery at the chief is what she would. I can hear in my ear now. Chief, the chief of orthopedic surgery at a hospital in Baltimore. I have another that became. She's an attorney, and she became partner at 26, and now she's an angel investor / VC. So, and then one went to Brown, the other one went to University of Pennsylvania. And so, and they just exude their confidence to me, and they were really the backbone for that. I would definitely say that. And they just basically, I would say they were like almost my surrogate parents, because there was such a big age difference. But they were going through things, and they'll tell me how they deal with it, and how to have that level of confidence. Making sure, obviously the old adage, you have to work twice as hard. But just that's really where it came from. And to see their successes, it put a level of pressure, as it were, on me to make sure that I can achieve, and feel confident and be pleased with what my achievements are. So I went to Florida A&M instead of Ivy League school, but many would say Florida A&M is the Ivy League school of HBCUs. But that's really where it came from. That's really where, and still to this day, one of my sisters, the one that's the angel investor, she made the pivot from being an attorney, a top attorney, and going into international law, and then ultimately, going into the angel investor space. And so she, because of that entrepreneurial spirit, she now can relate with the ebbs and flows that you go through in real estate. And so she was important in early parts of my career as someone that I can lean on that could actually relate. She was relatable, and so that's where it comes from. That's exactly where it comes from.
That's interesting because and it's great that it's like that. But I've heard a lot of stories when someone has like an older sibling who's like highly accomplished or just kind of brilliant. Because some people are just brilliant,
right?
Like even when they were kids, you're like, yeah, this person just brilliant.
Yeah.
And there's a pressure that comes with that because you're like, damn, I have to hit the marks that they're setting. I don't just want to be associated with like what they're doing. I want to create your own space. Did you ever feel any pressure?
I wouldn't say pressure because, I would have felt pressure had I wanted to be an attorney or a doctor. Then I would feel pressure. But I went more the creative route. So if anything, they were more pleased by what I was doing because there was no real path. What they're doing, they go to college, they go to med school, they go to law school, you do everything else and you have a direct path into what you want to do. There's no path for me. So, I went to college, I had post-grad internships, I was in Houston, I ended up at network television and doing this and that, so they supported me because of that, because I had the I guess the chutzpah, as it were, to really go out and do something that's unconventional, especially being, from a West Indian family, it's either doctor or lawyer, and they did both. Yeah. And so now TV, what is this TV thing you want to do? So they were really more supportive to me than it was like, I got to get to where they are, Yeah. It was interesting in that dynamic, the way it worked out.
Yeah.
But that's how it worked out.
Yeah. I'm curious your mindset early on, because I think you always hear with like people that really are able to achieve stuff. I feel like they usually fall into a few different categories. You have the person, and maybe Kanye West is like the perfect representation of this.
Okay.
The one who like before they've done anything, they are certain that like I'm going to succeed. I'm going to do this. And they come with that bravado, that confidence that almost borders on arrogance from like day one. They're certain of it. They are convinced. And then I think you have, you also see a lot of people that like, they're dedicated. They're putting the time in, they're putting the work in, but they're just unsure of how it's going to come about. And they're kind of just following these threads. They're following their interests. They're trying to do the best at every step. And just by being in the moment, by just honing their craft, they kind of, they almost ascend to a level by accident. Not accident in that they didn't want it to happen, but they didn't know it was going to happen in this way.
Right.
Which one would you say you were early on? Were you like, yeah, I'm going to do all these things. Like the Emmys are going to be there. I'm going to work and these events, or was it?
I think it was a little bit of both. I think early on, it definitely wasn't the bravado and the confidence. It was more like head down, nose to the grindstone, and do the work. And as I started to see different accomplishments and things I achieved, then I started to, like a lot of athletes, because I was always around them in the sports space, I started creating like a chip. I had a chip on my shoulder that I felt like, okay, I could do this, and they're gonna, once I get this opportunity, they're gonna see it, and I'm gonna kill it. And then as I started doing that and more of that chip evolved to that bit of the confidence that, watch what I do. And so in a lot of these things I did without the support of anyone else to make that happen. I mean, I did another video with who was this? This with Puff Daddy and someone else. Yeah, Puff Daddy for the Super Bowl. Another one. And I did that all on my own, like bringing that in, getting that relationship. And so, whereas there was some other people that had, a bigger budget and more means to get access to people. So I had to work harder to do that. So that's kind of like the chip and the confidence at the same time. And I think the same thing with real estate is initially was head down, nose to the grindstone, getting it done. Then as I realized, okay, I could do this and I can evolve to higher price points into the luxury space. And then the confidence came in. Then using the skill set from television, using that, say, here's what I'm going to do to really change the game in this space, especially as a black man doing, working in luxury. Then I started noticing other people trying to mimic similar things, but so that was my process, and that's where I would fall a little bit of both. Initially it's like just head down, little chip on the shoulder, and but I guess internally the confidence and the arrogance was there, but I could never really bring it out until after I felt comfortable, like, okay, I got this.
Yeah.
Now you're gonna see. Now the level of confidence comes out.
Yeah.
So, which is probably where I'm at right now.
Okay, nice. No, that's a good level to be. That's a good place to be. And I think it'd be funny if you did like a study of the people that are successful. How many of them have like a chip on their shoulder? Like it's a really
common theme.
Yeah.
It's a common theme. Because you just think about like, Jordan. I mean, I know, especially from Jordan, I don't think LeBron does it that much, but I know he would find one thing that someone might have said, or I know Kobe definitely did it. One thing or a quote that someone might have said, or, someone says something during the game and that's it. And then that's what they trigger to be, this is what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's common.
It's a powerful motivator. You know what's actually interesting? Tim Grover, he was the trainer for Michael Jordan. I think he trained Kobe and he trained Dwayne Wade as well. And he has a book called Relentless. He has a few books, all very good. And in one of the pages, in one of the chapters, he talks about what separates an all-star from an all-time great. So like, even if you think about the NBA, to be an NBA player, you're already in like the top 0.00001% of anyone playing basketball.
Right.
The all-stars, I don't know how many get selected, like 24, 25?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah. So within a very select, exclusive pool, you're great. An all-time great is like, you're basically a unicorn. It's like something different. And they ask him, they're like, what separates all-star from all-time great? Like, what makes someone all-time great? He said, the greats, there's a darkness to them. They all have a certain space that they can go to where it's like they're so present to the moment. It's the killer instinct.
Yeah.
There's a certain moment where it just gets quiet. And usually for like, if you're looking at Jordan or you're looking at Kobe, it's a certain point in the fourth quarter where it's time to close.
And they take over.
Yeah. And it's because they can go to a mental space where everything is so quiet and they're so instinctive. They're so in the moment that then their training and their talent is just like working in perfect accordance with their mind. I want to know, where did the chip start? Is there like a dark moment? Feeling underestimated, feeling slighted. Like, where did it begin?
I mean, I think first of all, yeah, it's a hell of a questions, man. You're really making me like I may have to go see a therapist after this.
No, we just do it all here. The therapy is included.
Exactly, the therapy session here.
I'll just bill you after this.
Yeah. No, I think for me, that started, it's something that you mentioned earlier about being the only person sometimes in a room. And just by being in that room and whatever the space is and being underestimated. That was it. Like, and knowing that I had the talent, because, again, not to date myself, but back then, when coming from an HBCU, it didn't have the illustrious profile that it has now. Like right now, it's a prideful. I mean, it was among African Americans, but not across the board. So it was perceived that, oh, you're not as good as because you went to a HBCU and not University of Pennsylvania or Brown or wherever else. And so when you come into those rooms, you're dealing with that perception. So you have to overcome that. And then that was the one thing that just transcended in everything. And so now when I went into real estate, it was still the same thing. I used the same chip of being someone that may not know this space and the people who've been here longer. So that was my internal chip that I used. And to get into that dark space and to really get down and really study and just continue to work at things without seeing the results. That's you talk about faith. That is faith, right? You pray for things and you just hope that it happens and you have the faith that it will happen. And it's the same thing when you get into that dark space. You work hard enough because you know those things will happen, but you're not seeing those results as timely as you would like to. But you continue to work, and I think that's where that's my dark space when I get into that work and I know that on the other side there's some big things that are going to happen. And I tell people all the time, it's like that one moment when you decide to say no, you're steps away from that one breakthrough. I never forget when my fiance, because I came into the industry a little bit, maybe a year or so before she did, and she was, the same. It's like a playbook. You work hard, you do things, but you're not seeing the results, and she was getting frustrated. And I told her, just keep at it. It's gonna pay off. And then the pipeline opened up, and it was her career is taking off. And that's what it is. Like, you get into that space. You keep that confidence, you rely on that confidence. That's the dark space that leads to sunlight and to greatness.
Yeah. No, it's a beautiful moment when it all pans out, when everything makes sense. And it's always I think the thing I've found, the rare instances it's happened in my life so far, the timing is always perfect. It's always in the hindsight, you're happy that you had to wait a bit longer.
Right.
Because the timing was just right every time. But you have to believe that. You have to have faith in it.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk about like winning the first Emmy, like the first one that you won. Like, what was the emotion?
I mean, it was great. It was great. I just it was great because I knew I actually contributed to that win. It was a collective win. It was for I think this was for basketball. It was a NBA playoffs. So I knew I was doing features with talent, and this was part of pregame and halftime show. So I know it was integral part, and I know I played a role in that. So it was good to just see that you were rewarded for your hard work. But at the same time, I don't use that as a benchmark for like greatness. Because I know there's things that I've done that have been so different and so creative that in the eyes of the voters, they didn't find it worthy, but I knew it was, something that was really trailblazing and really great. So it was a good emotion, but I don't, it's great as, conversation piece, but I don't allow that, or any award for that matter, to really be a barometer of what my success is. I think the same way I have that faith, I know internally what I'm doing and the impact I'm having on people. And that's what is really the determination of success for me. And I think a lot of times, we're off on the heels of the Oscars, and people look for, success from the Academy for whatever. But when you do great, when you have great body of work. I mean, Denzel's only won maybe 2 Oscars, 1 Oscar. I'm not even certain, but I can tell you that he's done tremendous amount of work that leaves a legacy for what he's done. And he wouldn't replace what he's done for an additional Oscar. So I think we have to get away from thinking that, being recognized by whatever body it is, whether, whomever, that justifies your work. Your work is what is good, and the successes will come. But I don't like to, Emmys are great and, whatever else, but I don't like to make it seem like that was a huge accomplishment, because on paper it is, but to me personally, no. Yeah. If you really want to be honest, I think I should have gotten several other Emmys as well.
Yeah. No, I like that. I think it's also, and you kind of spoke to it, it's also like the respect from peers, and also the respect from people that you like, that you worked with, that you were there day to day with. I know for me personally, it's also like the respect of family members as well.
Mm-hmm.
Like people that really know you, that know, because a lot of people just see this, right?
Right.
They see like when the cameras are on, in the beautiful studio with the production. They see the Oscar award ceremony.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't see the moments between that. There's so much that goes on behind the scenes to get to this point.
Yeah.
And I think that's really what you take pride in, the people that you worked with, family members, friends that know you.
Yeah, it's like Drake says, you weren't with me when I was shooting in the gym.
Yeah.
You're not there when the work is
that
happening.
Iconic line, yeah.
You're not there.
Yeah.
So that's where, and the people who are with you when you're shooting in the gym, that's who really knows, what's important to you.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my thing. I think about that all the time. Is like, social media, stuff like this is just a continuous highlight reel of your successes.
Yeah.
Very few people are transparent with what goes on day to day and how you deal with those, those peaks and valleys of the industry.
Yeah.
Especially now with the market being so volatile as it is.
Yeah.
But, everyone is always showing, the greatness that they do in a seller's market where they're doing, 5, 6, 700,000 over ask. But when you're have to be creative to get someone to come to this property and it's just lingering on the market, and you have developers or sellers that are saying what's going on, and then they're, in the back of their mind, they're thinking maybe I get a different broker, so that's where the hard work comes in. And that's what's not showcased enough, quite frankly, because that level of transparency and being able to put that out there, I think that'll propel you as, we go back to brand, propel you on your brand because of the journey, but it'll also give people a true perspective on what you need to do, the work. The work. You cannot sidestep the work. The work is not even a necessary evil, but it's a must. It's a must, and so that's what I'll tell you.
Yeah. No, I want to get deeper into your real estate career. But to finish off the television piece, you obviously worked with a lot of like really high profile talent and individuals. I'm curious if in that process of working with them, was there someone who surprised you? Was there someone who you were like, wow, the way he or she like works, it's like, dang, like I didn't know, like they were bringing, like you spoke about work, like the work ethic. You can't sidestep the work. Was there someone that when you think back, you're like, yeah, they're kind of the standard, like.
Yeah, and this is gonna sound odd, but you know who that person is for me was Shannon Sharpe. He's a Hall of Famer.
I love Shannon Sharpe.
Yeah, he's a Hall of Famer. I worked with him when he came into television. And it shouldn't be a shock, but it was a shock because I know as a Hall of Famer, you have a level of work ethic, clearly because you're at the pinnacle of your career and only few people get into the Hall of Fame. But initially when he started, there was a lot of pushback with his enunciation and his accent being, his Southern accent and stuff like that. And I worked with him as his producer, and he got better and better. And I know that when he got home, he was looking at films, similar to what he did in his football days. He was looking at film. He continued to work at it, and he got progressively better. And I know he put in the work. And the only thing that surprises me is because a lot of times when you succeed at that level in something else, you don't necessarily feel like you want to put in the work again in a whole different field. But he put in the work, and I watched him evolve and become, now that he has his own show with Skip Bayless, and I would say, he's probably the star of the show and not Skip at this point.
Yeah.
But he's the work ethic that he put in to be where he is now, knowing from where I know he started, and to see that process in front of me, that was something that I was like, okay, he's putting in the work.
Mm.
He's putting in the work, and he continues to do it in something that he's not the best at right now. And he's gotten so much better, and he's going to continue to improve.
Mm.
And that's the person. That would be the one.
That's amazing. You
Yeah.
know what's funny about Shannon, and he's so talented. Is even for me, and I'm sure for like a lot of people, we know him first as a television personality
Right.
and presenter.
Mm-hmm.
That is an incredible achievement just in of itself. Like, you have one of arguably the greatest tight end ever, and he'll walk into certain rooms with certain people, and they will know him first and foremost for being a television personality, for something that he started like in the near the end of his sporting career.
Yeah.
And just by putting in those reps and that work over time, he was able to craft that legacy for himself.
And actually, he pretty much, I would say now as I think about it, I use the power pivot, but he started the power pivot, because that's a hell of a pivot from where he was to pivoting into television and being completely known now as, as you mentioned, a television personality.
Yeah.
That's the true power pivot right there.
Yeah. And the thing one of the things you said at the start is like leaving your stamp, leaving your mark on something. And he's one of one.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I would say Skip Bayless as well, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Stephen A. Smith.
Yep.
It's like, you can't replace these people.
Right.
You can't swap someone out and put someone else in and they give you that effect. They really left their mark on it. I think one of the things that you said that's interesting is how difficult it is to go from being at the top of one field to then going to another field and dedicating your time. And instantly when you said that, I thought, why is it so difficult? And in my mind, the reason it's so difficult is because it takes an insane amount of humility. Because if we use the Shannon Sharpe example, you get respect everywhere you go for what you did on the football field. You're one of the best. And there's a comfort and a confidence that comes in knowing I'm Shannon Sharpe. I'm Hall of Fame tight end. In your case, I've won these Emmys, and I get the sense you don't even think like this, but like you're accomplished in this field. And so to go to another field and basically be a novice when no one respects you in that field,
space, yeah.
You're just seen, like in Shannon Sharpe's case, he's just the tight end that's now trying to talk about the NBA or like other sports topics. In your case, you're like the sports producer who's now trying to do real estate.
Right.
And I'm sure you can feel that sometimes of people. It's like, what does he know about real estate?
Right.
Here's where I want to begin with it. You're at the top of a field. You've put in a ton of preparation. You've built relationships. You've gone the extra mile. What makes you think I'm going to leave what I have here and I'm going to go down to the bottom in this new field? I'm going to do all that preparation again. I'm going to build all those relationships again. What spurs that? What makes you think like that?
It's two things. And I'm going to try to say it in the right order of importance. I think it's faith and confidence. Those are the two things that we talked about earlier, and that it resonates throughout, because knowing that I don't believe different thoughts or ideas come into your head that you feel you can do without there being some truth to it. I've always, even while I was in edit rooms and working on pieces, I would dabble my toe into real estate. So I'd be on the phone trying to negotiate deals as I'm in an edit room. And I just knew that if I really dedicate myself to this, I can do it really well. But so many people, especially when you feel like you've reached whatever this level is in one field, they're afraid to make that pivot. They're afraid to start over. And a long time ago, I used to say fear is crippling. And fear can just keep you in a space and in a box, and we know for there to be growth, you have to be uncomfortable. And so when you go to this different space and you're uncomfortable in this space, that's what drives you. And I knew that the same, but it's the same inner feeling I had when I first started in television, that I knew I can have an impact there. And I knew then that I can have an impact in real estate as well. So, and one other thing, and if I were to add a third word, which you said, and you really hit on the head, is a humility. You have to have that humility to say, okay, I'm going to start over. And there aren't too many people that are willing to do that. And I'll tell you just a quick little story. That's what really led to my fiance and I, because she did the same thing. She was, great in the beauty space, for several brands, and then she started her own company, and had two storefronts in Brooklyn, and was getting tremendous amount of press. The mayor gave her different awards, and she was recognized with stuff, great campaigns, but she decided to make that pivot. And that was the attraction, that you have that same level of confidence to do what I just did, that I know you're someone that's special. And I think that's what's important, when you have that faith and that confidence, and you know what it entails, because you did it already. When you did it previously, you know how difficult of a challenge it was, but you want to do it nonetheless, because when you get on that other side, that success is just, that's why Emmys and stuff aren't necessary. Because when you get to the other side in real estate, you know that you've succeeded and you've won. And it's really an internal battle is really what it is, because you have to, and I always say, we talked about therapy earlier. I'm like my own personal therapist through real estate, because there's that one part of you that knows, okay, this is messed up what happened, but you're going to get through this. You've had difficult transactions before, you know what to anticipate. You'll be fine. But in that moment, I'm completely frustrated. So it's like, that's really what it is. That's really what it is. And you know that, it's like when you work out and you don't see the results, but you continue to work out because you know they're going to come. It's the same type of thing. Yeah. It's the same type of thing.
Yeah. It's crazy. I've been feeling that, because so maybe 5-6 weeks ago, I left my job to do this podcast full time.
Okay.
And there's like a jump there, right? Like, I was doing this podcast for over a year before that. But every now and then, once you see a certain level of proof, and you see that there's something out there for you and something that you really love and enjoy and want to put your time in, you have to make the jump. And then once you make the jump, there's then like this, you're on this whole new journey where, and especially in those initial moments, and you kind of spoke to it, there's a ton of uncertainty. You feel deeply uncomfortable. And it's funny because I've had a very similar thing where it's like, there's almost, you have like a voice in your head that's just telling you to like stay poised, because there's certain things that are happening. Like it takes time for you to see the fruit of your decision and of the work that you've put in. And in that time, it's like, if there's a volume knob for like your self-doubt, it's like starting to like prick up a little bit.
Completely.
And like you're starting to feel it a bit.
With
you're like,
heavy bass too. Like,
you're like, oh, this is getting a bit louder in here.
Yeah, exactly.
And you just need, but it's funny because I have that. Like there's a voice that is just, stay calm. Like you've got it. Like just stay in the moment. Stay there. Yeah. Don't lose it. Really take us in depth into those initial moments with real estate. When were the moments when that self-doubt was just at a max? It was at its highest.
Yeah, I mean, I tell you, people who work in real estate will definitely relate to this. Is those moments when you're not getting paid. Yeah, those are the moments when the transactions, it's you eat what you kill. Yeah, and when things aren't happening, that's the moment. That's the moment when you start to think, oh, it'll be pretty easy if I can just go freelance somewhere and do something in production and get like a 6-month gig. It'd be pretty easy. But then it'll prolong that process. It's like it's a rite of passage. It's really a rite of passage, and you have to be able to withstand that storm. There are times when you do get, you close out some, and I'm talking about sales primarily. And when you close out, a big transaction, it feels great. And then, then you got like, what's next? You know, so it's like you have to constantly stay on the grind to look for the next transaction and to, you know, obviously you work within your sphere and you have referrals and everything else, but it's still, that's still a part of it, you know, and that was that the biggest thing was just, you know, understanding that you're doing the right stuff. These moments of uncertainty will pass, and just continue with the work. Continue with the work, and you're going to get the results. And you start to see little bit of results here and there. It's like you said, it's you're planting a seed, and you can water it, and you water it, and a flower doesn't bloom. But then when that flower blooms, you have huge sunflowers. You know, you have a whole garden. You know, so that's really what it is. That's why, you know, that faith, confidence, humility, and resilience. You know, those things are so key, key. You know, and if you speak to anyone that does this, you know, you even talked about it, and that you've had that, or you're having, or what have you, those emotions. That's part of the process. That's part of the process.
Yeah.
You know, everyone, you know, you think about movie stars, whether it be Steve Harvey that lived in his car, or Tyler Perry that lived in his car, or The Rock that got, you know, cut from University of Miami and then didn't play at CFL and only had like $200 in his pocket and then went to Hollywood. Like, everyone has that story, that path, you know, and there are a lot of people that just turn back. The ones that stick it through and they do the work there and they get, you know, with the right coaches, you know, to really improve at the craft, they succeed. Yeah. And that's what it is. It's across the board. Yeah. It's across the board.
Yeah. You know what's because I am in that emotion right now, and I haven't had the first big transaction. I haven't had that first win yet. But it's
well, I'm here, so here you go. Here you go.
Yeah. No. There's been a ton of wins with the podcast,
right,
and having like incredible conversations. But that first big like financial transaction, which shows you like this isn't just a great creative endeavor that's like impacting people, but like I can make a living off of this. There's sponsors. There's not that validity yet. But that said, I wouldn't trade it for anything. And even when you talk about comedians, famous actors, musicians, people that are sleeping in their car before they hit it big, there's something that's very fulfilling about just, and maybe this is the risk taker in me, is just being like, I put it on the line. Like, I believed in this thing so much that I actually put everything on the line. And there's people, and I've even had these moments when like you're doing a lot of talking without putting it on the line. I think a lot of I think even like Nipsey Hussle and a lot of like entrepreneurs would talk about this. It's like it's different when you're putting your own money up.
Yeah.
Like when you put your own money up, that's like, now you're like really an entrepreneur, because you take the risk. If it doesn't go well, it's on you. And even though it hasn't happened yet, there's something so fulfilling about just being like, I'm in the game. Like, you dream of moments like that, of being like, I'm really doing this. Like, I'm really living, like living it. Like I'm doing it 100%.
And I think there's something to be said when you say putting your money up. There's something to be said for that sweat equity versus check equity. And you know, you may not be putting your money up, but you're putting the sweat equity up by doing this. And that's just as important. You know, some people may say that's even more important, because it's like, in order to get the money, whether it be from a third party sponsor, whomever it is, this is where it starts. This is where it starts. So that's the path towards the next goal. You know, so once you're doing this, and I tell people this, that, you know, it's easy to make the decision to do the pivot, but the hard part is to become dedicated to doing it every single day. And that's really where the wins begin. You know, so you're well on your way. You're well on your way, because you're the seed is you're watering the seed right now. Yeah. You know, so it's gonna blossom.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. I appreciate that so much. I want to talk more about your early days in real estate.
Okay.
If you were going to think about like your first year, you spoke about the importance of not only making the pivot, but being dedicated to it.
Mm-hmm.
That first year, those initial stages, what was that even like? Like, where did you start? What were you doing in those initial stages? What was the dedication? What did it look like?
Well, the dedication there, as I mentioned earlier, has a lot to do with the coaching. And so I relied heavily on the coaching to come up with different marketing strategies. I just needed someone to give me some insight, even about transactional processes. I knew enough about it, but there were some things that I was a little bit uncertain about. So I got the clarity there. And I'll never forget, like, one of my first sales that I did, and I used a third party to get some type of leads, and then I got a lead, and they were looking to sell their property. And so I don't know, maybe they had, you know, a liking to me, so they gave me an opportunity. I barely knew what I was doing at that point, but what I did know was how to market. So after I sold, and there was a broker that, you know, in real estate, oftentimes people try to make buildings their own, whether they live in the building or they've sold in the building before. They try to become the broker of house,
I've
you know,
seen that, yeah.
in the building. So there was someone that was there, and I was so naive. I mean, frankly, even if I know now, I'd still do it. But I was so naive and had no idea that there was someone there. So once I sold the one property, and that person came in, and she was like, "Oh, that's cute. You're doing one," and she was like, "Oh, you'll be one and gone." So because of the coaching that I drafted a letter, and I had the seller review the letter, and basically it was just speaking about my, you know, how good of a job I did for her in her transaction. Got her X amount of dollars over ask. If you're gonna need someone, if you're gonna sell, use this person. And then I had her sign it, and I made copies, and I sent it to every single person in that building, including the person that that lived in the building that was a broker.
Yeah.
And she was like, "There's no way in the world she wrote that letter. He made it up. That's not true. I know her." Because then I got another listing in the building. I think the mother's place. I then sold the mother's place. Then there was a third listing in the building.
Oh, snap.
She was just living. And then she called the managing director of the building. "This guy's doing this. He's doing that." And, you know, it was a whole uproar. But the whole point is, because I leaned on that coaching and I did something creative that now people do regularly, that was like my first big win. But because I wanted to expedite that process with coaching, that's what it did for me. And then from there, you know, things started taking off after that. But it was that moment that I knew, okay, I could, if I'm affecting her that much, and I just got into this, I have something else up my sleeve for you. Yeah. So that was an interesting moment.
Yeah. That's actually, it's a beautiful journey, going from being like underestimated to the point, like almost dismissed, to the point of like, you like have to be acknowledged. Right. It's like, I
remember she called my manager and was like, "This guy's doing it," and my manager, what is this? And then I just showed him the letter. I was like, "Oh, she's just pissed."
Yeah.
And then it was a moot point at that point.
Yeah. How long did you work like with a coach? And then what was it like? Or do you still work with a coach? Like, what was it like when you stopped? Or
I worked with the coach for like maybe 2 to 3 years when I first started. That's where I put my money there into doing that. And even now, I don't work with a coach directly, but at Serhant we have an entire seller like Serhant, or educational piece.
Yeah,
and
I heard
so
about that.
so I actually was a moderator for one of the pieces, and myself and my fiance was featured in Business in a Box, which was one of the last programs that came out. And I still go back to that because it's, you know, I always looking for new ways and creative ways to do things. So I'm still a big believer in coaching. So I would recommend that to everyone, to do that. Even if you've been in the business, especially if you've been in the business for a while, some way to retool some of the strategies you use. And if you're new to the business, a way of determining what works for you or what you should be doing. So that was, I'm still a big believer in that.
Yeah. Now the retool, that's a big thing. I remember we had a guest that said you have to constantly reinvent yourself.
Completely.
That's a part of humility as well. It's like even just having the thought of like I need to retool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're growing, you have the coach, you're selling properties, you're getting acknowledged. People are calling up pissed.
Yeah.
What was like, how did you meet Ryan? Like what was the next jump?
Right. So with meeting Ryan, that actually happened ironically through my fiance. So we were both at that time in another firm, and Ryan had reached out, and I told her that we should definitely go there. I'll leave my current, because I knew the structure that they had. I knew the impact that I can have, coupled with the talent that they have there. I didn't know the capacity, I guess the quality of the production folks. But now, in retrospect, I realized they're excellent. Very similar to like the network level people that I worked with. Wow. But I didn't know that. But I knew that I could mold whomever I work with to really get certain quality of production. And I knew that was the direction that the industry was going, and we really needed that support internally. And so I was like, listen, let's do it. Then I met with Ryan. We both met with Ryan. And I never forget this. I don't know if he'll even remember, but I told him, look, we're not looking to recreate, to morph our brand into yours. We want to have our own identity and be aligned with you. And I told him, I said, we want you to be we want to be the Bieber to your Usher, or Drake or Lil Wayne and Drake. That's what we want. Yeah. We don't want to be like just under your umbrella and just getting anything that you get. That's not what we want. And so I think he was a little like, he laughed at that. He's like, oh yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. Like Ryan's always gung ho for whatever type of creative thing you want to do. But I know he didn't expect for us to have the impact that we had when we got there, and we continue to have now. So, but that's how we met. And I think that kind of had a lasting impression with him. And so we just continue to do stuff to push the envelope, to do different things at the firm, to understand the importance of diversity, having other events there that speak to that. I mean, one of the first things we did was Black History Month piece that I directed, and I got a lot of the Black and minority. Well, this was specifically for the Black agents to speak to the issues and the struggles they have getting into the luxury space, and how they deal with that on a day to day. And to this day, there's never been a firm that's done anything that poignant that really spoke directly to Black history. I mean, there'll be some firms that have like a great Instagram post and those type of check the boxes type thing, but nothing that really had that level of impact. And the level of responses I got from agents throughout the country because of that was phenomenal. And I think that really speaks to us pushing the envelope, but more importantly, it speaks to Ryan and being open to it and understanding the importance of it. So for things like that, I really commend him for. And then most recently we had, my fiance had a Money Matters event that was about women and finance. It was a room full of 85, primarily African-American women and speakers that the importance of finance, and with one of the top female developers in the country was the keynote speaker. So those type of things that really are important to try to change the narrative in real estate are things that Ryan is open to. And I think that needs to be recognized because a lot of other firms wouldn't do it, or wouldn't do it to that capacity, I would say.
Yeah. No, it's actually, it's a great thing even about being able to do a podcast, is like being able to like illuminate stories like that because I think especially in the Black community, so often the stories we see, and they're inspirational stories, incredible people, but it's typically athletes. It's your like LeBron, your Dwayne Wade, your Kobe Bryant, and they're incredible. Or it's your musicians. But we have so much talent in our community.
Oh, yeah.
Like we go way past just like sports and like music. Like the business acumen, the marketing, the branding. Like it's special, and I think it's powerful that like the younger generation in our community as well is able to see those stories and see that there's more pathways than just being the next LeBron, just being the next Lamar Jackson, just being the next Drake or P. Diddy or like there's power in that narrative and in those stories being told.
No, absolutely. I mean, and to that point, we had an Agents of Color event that we held at this year for Black History, that we held at the Serhant House, and I brought my 11-year-old daughter, and I want her to be in the room to have the impact of seeing all these agents of color, and seeing that there's other opportunities and there are other things outside of what you spoke about. I think it's important to have that type of messaging, because I frankly didn't have that when I was younger. I didn't know of anyone else in television production that was at this capacity. Nor did I know anyone in real estate. So I think when we see these actual examples of excellence, it'll have impact, and it continues to have impact on our future. As a whole. As a whole.
100%.
And it's really, and frankly, that should be the microcosm of America. To see a diverse space where everyone succeeds. And then just allow your talent, to be that really takes you to the top. Theoretically, that's what we want America to be. But we know there's still obstacles there, but separate and apart from that, I think those examples are important.
I think that the really important thing for me is like, I just want people to have like the belief. I think it's something that I've been blessed with, and I think a lot of it does come from like your parents and like how you grow up and the family structure around you and what they kind of instill into you. But it just gets really special when you actually have that belief that you can do something that maybe at the time your results don't indicate that you could do that, but just having that belief and the foresight of like, if I put the work in, like I won't be able to be stopped. Like it will be inevitable. Like it will happen. And I think a lot of the times in the stories that I've heard, in the conversations that I've had in my own life, it starts with the belief.
And I think that's why it's so important to give back, because, I can have tremendous success in a luxury space and be on television or do production stuff, whatever it is. But the real, and when you mentioned Nipsey Hussle, I thought about him, that he said that Rick Ross told him once that the really way you get to measure your success is how many other people are you able to help to get to your level. Now that may not be literally being able to do that, but at least being able to speak to a certain audience, to let them know, to have, like you said before, that belief, because that belief will spark the drive for them to do the work, to know that that's something that's possible. And then you can see the other people that are affected by that one person that's affected by you, and it's the trickle down effect, and everyone starts to really be impacted by it. And I think that's what's really important, is for us to be cognizant of that, and to constantly have some means of giving back to the community, to help in any way, shape we can, way, shape or form we can.
No, 100%. Okay, here's where I want to go next.
Okay.
You've obviously worked with some of the best agents in the field. You work with Ryan, who it's funny actually. I was telling my mom, because my mom loves $1 Million Listings New York. Like we used to watch it for years.
Wow. Well, too bad that's gone.
Yeah.
But there may be other things coming soon.
Yeah.
I'll leave it.
Okay.
That's a cliffhanger.
Okay, nice.
Stand by.
Nice. Oh, that was a good one. That was a good one.
That was a mic drop moment.
Yeah. Yeah, that was definitely a mic drop moment. But there's so many like special agents that were on that show. Like they were like incredibly successful, have sold probably like billions of dollars of real estate at that point. Let's start with talking about Ryan, actually.
Okay.
Working with him, and he's someone that he's kind of gone into new spaces and done things in a different way. Even before this podcast, I was looking at his YouTube. He's killing it on YouTube, and then that's now dovetailing into real estate. What kind of stands out about Ryan just from like working with him? Like, what's something that would surprise people?
You know, and I talked about this before, how Instagram seems to be like a highlight reel of successes. But what stands out with Ryan is his work ethic and his commitment to being better every single day. And his tenacity. I mean, this is a guy that gets up, I want to say either 4:30 or 5 o'clock every day. He works out every day. He I don't know if he still meal preps, but he definitely intermittent fasts. I mean, and not just your standard, I intermittent fast, not just standard 8 to 10 hours or 12 hours. He will do an entire day of fasting. I mean, the mental fortitude that he has is something that I look at in every day. And then if he's like, we've gone out to dinner before, only once. I've only got to dinner with him one time that he's actually eaten a meal in its entirety. You know, he'll have morsels here, morsels there, because he's cognizant of what he's eating, of his diet, and he's sticking to it. So that discipline, that's what it really comes down to. The level of discipline that he has to continue to learn and to be dedicated is something that I think people just don't know, because they see Ryan, like you said, the YouTube Ryan, the $1 million listing Ryan or whatever else, but they don't see the Ryan that puts in the work. Because, you know, you talk about educating. This is someone that isn't even from New York, you know, who went through everything we talked about, you know, that the ebbs and flows of the business, had an opportunity, ended up on the show as a hand model. And then now he's, you know, he took that and it catapulted into his career, you know, and that's someone that really pushes the importance of creating your brand. And we work at Serhant, but each individual agent is a brand. And that's what he pushes. And clearly, when you look at him at his level of success, there's no reason why you wouldn't think that shouldn't resonate with you. So I do the same thing. I'm creating my brand. You know, I'm establishing that JSA stamp. You know, that Team Trisha Lee, Trisha and I. You know, that's a brand. We're individual and we're together. So that's what I really get from Ryan, is his level of discipline that I think is quite honestly like unmatched. Unmatched.
Yeah. It's funny actually, because I remember watching I think he had like a day in the life on his YouTube. And it starts and it's like he's filming it in New York and it's the morning, but it's dark.
Yeah.
And he's like outside of a gym somewhere. And he's like, oh yeah, I'm just about to get the workout in. And then I think he does like the next day and it's like the same thing again. It's like clockwork. I would say the thing that stood out from watching him on the show, because obviously like they're all like great salespeople. They're all like engaging, like charismatic, whatever. But it was like how creative he was. And like you would see some of the things that he would do to like sell properties. Like at open houses, he's like dressed up in some costume and you're like, what is going on? But it leaves
I thought you would go the other way when he's not dressed and he has his butt showing on in a shower seat or something.
Like it's
because that was a great moment on $1 Million Listing too that he always talks about.
I'm curious actually, as someone that's worked with him, are there any like crazy Ryan Serhant stories, stuff like where you're just like, that is an out of the box thinker right there?
Yeah, I mean, Now I haven't been with him that long, so I wasn't really privy to all the bizarre stuff that he did on $1 Million Listing. But I would tell you this, that he's open to any type of creative idea that you have. He's not gonna, poo-poo on it and say, oh, no. He's gonna push and he's gonna say, let's do it. Let's do it. And to have that kind of support, from the company that you work with, to just give you, like, within reason, like carte blanche of doing whatever you want to do, that's great. And for me as a creative, that's even better, because now I'm working with a creative, and we have a department full of creatives in our studio team.
Yeah.
So I can go to them and say, hey, and we speak the same language, let's do this. And they're like, okay, yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. Yeah. So it's almost like I like to challenge them. And I think there's a part of them that enjoys that too, because after a while, you don't have too many creative people in real estate. So you end up doing maybe a lot of cookie cutter stuff. And every once in a while, you have something that's outside of the box that you can really do. And I like to do that to push the team, the production team, and they like it also. They like it also. And then Ryan, once the final product is over, Ryan just loves it.
Yeah.
So that I haven't said anything crazy, but there's going to be some crazy things happening soon.
Yeah.
I could promise you that.
Yeah. One of the things that I thought was really cool when I looked at your Instagram and like just different social pages is that you work with your wife and that you guys are building something together. I feel like there must be there's probably married couples around the country, around the world, that look at that and they're like, I wonder what his experience is like. Yeah. I wonder how that is.
I mean, that is and continues to be a work in progress.
Yeah.
Because we've only worked together. This last year was our first year working together. And that was interesting because we had to get a better sense of each other's strengths and be able to just, let that person lead in that whatever that genre is. So that was part of it. And then establishing hard outs. Like we're done at 7:00. We're not talking anything work related. Which she'll tell you, I probably break that all the time. If there's something like, especially something creative, I'll say, hey, why don't we try and do this? Like I remember once we were watching something on Netflix and I was like, oh, that'd be perfect for us to do our next property tour. And then we went to the studios the next day and said, hey, here's what we want to do. We want to recreate a bunch of Trisha Lees, and she's playing chess against herself, and then she's in the back, and then I forget what movie it was from. It was someone who took some type of drug and they started just cleaning up the entire apartment and moving so quickly, and they were like multiple shots to them. So we did that. But it's interesting. And then you have to, just in general, pick your battles. Like when there are things that, I know that she may deem to be more important than I think is important. And then so like, okay, you think that's important, you run with it and you do that. I'll support you, but you take the lead on that. So it's just really understanding how we think differently, but yet ultimately coming up with the same final result on, whether it be selling a property for the client. The client's always number one. So we may take different paths to get there, but we get there. And she's definitely, I'd say that she's definitely earning her stripes in the TV space. She may not know the terminology and stuff, but she's starting to, want to do something this way and that way. And then I'll just tell Jeff, and he'll translate it to you into what makes sense.
Yeah.
So that's what we'll do. But it's a process. It's a process, and it's just like marriage in general. It's a process, and you have to work at it.
Yeah.
So the good thing, and then she was always, I'll say this, she was always reluctant with us to, for the whole idea of us working together, because you'd just be too much. But I think the fact that we're not in a brick and mortar store, as it were, it's just, she's working on something else, I'm working somewhere else. So we aren't together all the time. So that's what gives the reprieve. But it's still, it's still a challenge.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I would much rather work with her than anyone else, knowing that she has my back wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
And I don't know of a better marketing person than her, so it's like understanding her strengths and relying on that and letting her run with it, because there aren't too many people that do it better than she does.
Yeah.
And recognizing that. And you talk about humility. That's some level of humility, especially as a man, to say, oh, and not to mention the team is a Trisha Lee team. So that's where you talk about pick your battles. Like I don't care the name.
Yeah.
So that's what it is. It's just really understanding who's stronger at certain things and letting them run with it, and then finding that comfortable medium. But at the end of the day, even if we have differences, which we do, when there be direction on pitches, if it's my client versus her client, who should take the lead, how are we doing this? And we both are very adamant in our positions. And if you're like on the outside looking in, you're like, ooh, this is getting kind of hairy. But it really isn't. It's just us like expressing ourselves and how we feel, and then it's over. Then it's done. But it can get a little dicey, but it's part of how we communicate. And at that point, we aren't necessarily husband and wife. We're like two people who are two leads on a team who have a position on that we think is best on how to approach for the ultimate success. And then we figure out how to make it work. Yeah.
You know what I was thinking, actually, because you said you love working with someone that like has your back. And I was thinking sometimes there's a lot of trust in conflict. And here's what I mean by that. Sometimes when you're in conflict or going back and forth with someone, there's actually a lot of trust in that interaction, because you have to have enough belief and trust in that person that it's not going to spiral. Like certain people, you'll never even let it get to a point where you're like in any sort of disagreement, because you don't trust what their temperament is.
Right.
And it's funny because even with my family, a lot of the times I'll ask them for like advice. And sometimes if it's like hotly contested, like it will be, we're going back and forth. And it can seem heated. But that's because we both know each other's temperament. I know that what my mum is telling me is 100% in the best interest of what I'm trying to build. So when we're going back and forth, I'm not thinking that she's making personal remarks or anything like that. It's just about getting to the idea. It's just about getting to the truth. Yeah. One thing I don't know if I'm going to get you into like your relationship advice bag right here with this question. We'll see. I'm 25.
Okay.
You're obviously happily married now. You have a daughter. If you were to go back to your 25-year-old self and drop some relationship wisdom from like just what you've experienced, and I liked when you even said like it's a challenge, because I feel like it's real. It's like the real. What would you say to yourself?
Be very selective. Be very selective, because what I would tell you is whomever, just relationship wise, whomever you're dating, consider yourself, consider if that would be someone that you want to have a child with. And if you would want any of their traits to be part of that child that you guys have together. Because that, your partner is, if I were to give it a percentage, I would say 75% important to the level of success, equating to the level of success that you have. Because however they think, you hang around 4 billionaires, you're going to be the 5th billionaire. You're going to spend most of your time with your partner. So make sure it's someone that their goals, their ideologies, their belief system aligns with you, because that's going to impact you one way or the other. You ever notice how people say, you couples end up looking alike, or start, all of a sudden they not necessarily dress alike, but they start to look alike and act alike and sound like each other, because you spend so much time with each other. So if that partner isn't someone that you can see you build with, then I would minimize the amount of time that you spend there. Because even if it's for like a short-lived 2-year relationship or a year or whatever it is, that's a year that you can find someone else that would be more ideal for you. So get beyond the physical and look at internally who the person is. And if you could procreate with that person.
Mm.
If you could, are they aligned with your principles and your values?
Mm.
And if they aren't, don't spend too much time.
Yeah.
That's what I'll say. Don't spend too much time with that person. That's what I would tell myself.
Yeah.
That's what I tell
That's
myself.
solid. That's a high bar as well. It's a
Yeah.
high bar.
Yeah, because then you really have to look into the high bar is really for you
Mm.
to then determine, what are those values? What are those systems?
Mm.
What is it that works with you that you're looking for in someone else? So it takes to do the work internally first to then be able to find, that partner.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's a process.
Yeah.
It's a process. But I think that's what I would tell myself.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I would tell myself.
That's impactful, man. That's impactful. Okay. Before we get out of here, you gave us a slight teaser
Oh, yeah.
with the $1 million listing mic drop moment that you had.
Right.
Is there anything more that you can tell us?
Just stay tuned. That's what I can tell you. Stay tuned. There'll be more Ryan and company, potentially. But stay tuned. Stay tuned. Something soon. Something may happen soon. That's enough.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is my mom gonna be happy because she loves that show?
I mean, I don't know if she's gonna be happy. She may be. I think she probably will be. We'll see.
Okay.
We'll see. I'll just put an asterisk next to that.
Okay. Cool.
Perhaps.
Okay. Cool. No, that's a wrap. It's been a pleasure, man. It's been a pleasure
likewise.
having you. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the channel. We're having fire conversations every week on the podcast. Before we end the episode, a quick word from our sponsor, Free Agency. What if I told you there is a good chance you're leaving money on the table in your career? It would kind of annoy you a bit, right? Well, Free Agency aims to stop that. They represent and manage talent in the tech industry. Here's how they do it. First, they provide you with a dedicated talent agent. Think about this as your career quarterback. They understand you and your career goals. Based on that understanding, they bring you suitable interviews at top firms. You focus on smashing the interview, and together with their network, research, negotiation expertise, they will make sure you get a top of market salary. Stop job searching alone and start building your dream career today with Free Agency.